Hi everybody, for this final video I thought it'd be a great place for us to wrap up to talk about identification with all humanity as a construct. This is a very trait-like variable, so it's consistent over time and situation, and a relatively new scale. Last time we talked a little bit about Samuel Alliner, who this is so precious. He does some work with his wife, so Alliner and Alliner have done some work, but also this work draws from Maslow and Adler and someone named Monroe, who also, Maslow and Adler do a lot with like self-actualization. You think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs and how the more we develop as human beings, the more we care about other people and care about fulfillment and a higher calling. But Monroe and then the Alliners had researched Holocaust helpers, specifically people who would risk their own lives to save Jews during the Holocaust. People who did this were not Jewish, so they were outgroup members. Then, of course, obviously they were putting their own lives at risk by being so helpful, and many times they had to act quickly. So this scale that I'm having you complete, you may have already completed it, or you're going to complete it after you listen to this short video. It gets at this construct. So it comes out of all of those types of ideas and those researchers' work. And so something I want to point out about the Holocaust survivors that were interviewed by the Alliners and by Monroe, many of them talked about the fact that humanity is their family. Humanity is their group. They didn't use the word in group, but they would say things like, you know, I'm part of the human race, or human beings are like cells. Each of us is a cell within one main body. We are all connected. So to them, a Jew, it isn't I'm not a Jew, they are a Jew, we're all human beings. And so one other thing I want to point out is in interview data, the people who had actually rescued people during the Holocaust, when compared to other people, even people who are helpers in their everyday lives, the people who had made these grandiose attempts at outgroup members, they not only responded in the way I just described, but they responded that way incredibly quickly. They responded that way without any prompt from the researchers, without any probing. They were quick to say these things without hesitation and with great conviction. So then no wonder they acted just as quickly. So a couple things then about the scale that you're completing. This scale holds up, it's reliable, and also to ensure its validity, they have found it is negatively related to ethnocentrism, and it came out of this idea that they wanted something that was working against ethnocentrism, that was moving beyond it. But you could really apply it to any in-group or out-group distinction, country or otherwise. And one of the things that they also found with this data is that people who score high on the scale that you're completing, they also score high in terms of their knowledge of global events, also their willingness to seek out that information, and their willingness to pay money, to donate their money, to donate time if they could, but to donate their money to people that needed it all over the world, not just in their local area or within their in-groups. And I think most amazingly, we see that people who score high on the scale care and act equally as much to their in-groups as to their out-groups, which this semester we've been talking about so much is such a rare thing. We think that less than 10% of the population, but it's hard to say, but we think less than 10% actually fit into this. And they're like the outliers on all of these scales and all these other measures that we talk about and all these other experiments and behaviors where people are acting in very, I like my in-group, I don't like my out-group ways. Not individuals who score high here. So one of the things that many of the researchers speculate, and a couple have actually assessed, like Alliner, and I'm really interested in my own work, forthcoming work, is how do we cultivate this? Maslow said that since it is a pinnacle of human development, what happens is that when we're really little, we care for ourselves, right? And then we slowly move outward, we care for our family, we care for our mom and dad, we care for our siblings, we care for our friends. And as we grow, as we develop, as we mature, we are able to care for more and more people. So it makes sense why this humanity is my in-group or identification with all humanity, as it's more formally called, why that would be such a high point and such something for all of us to reach for as human beings. Pretty amazing. It's also pretty uplifting, which is why I like to end on this note. So if you would please fill out the measure for yourselves and turn it back in, and then I just put a bunch of notes at the bottom about stuff that I want you to think about. It might be applicable for your projects, but it might just also be applicable for your life, for your organization, for the organizations with which you visit. It actually reminds me a lot of, in Philly, there are places to get cheesesteaks, and one of the very famous places to get cheesesteaks happens to be incredibly ethnocentric. And I think about one of the reasons why I like another cheesesteak place is that although they're grosser, actually, and so less sanitary and even a little bit rude, they certainly are less ethnocentric. I think they would do better on this scale. It's just something that kind of makes me laugh, and I think about it, why I go to Pat's instead of Geno's for steaks. But anyways, you can think about the businesses that you frequent, and of course think about your own workplace and how this measure would be useful to obtain, and how it might be something useful to cultivate. And certainly as a family scholar, I'm really interested in how we cultivate this. We talked about this last week with Oliner's work, and how parents really cultivate world is my humanity, or humanity is my in-group mentality, when they talk to their kids about all kinds of different groups, and they are very positive when they do so. When they welcome people into their home who are different, when they talk about the value of difference, and they talk about the value of mankind. So I welcome you to do the same in your own life. It's such a pleasure.